Welcome to the 7th video in the series, Foundations of Communist Organizing. Today we'll be going over the 1904 piece by Luxemburg, Organizational Questions of the Russian Social Democracy, as Leninism or Marxism. I've subtitled this Proletarian Autonomy over Blanquist Centralization. In this text, Rosa Luxemburg criticizes Lenin for his thesis on the organizational form of the party. Lenin's conception of the Central Committee is alleged that it should functionally be the only thinking organ, since it names all local committees, has the right to appoint effective organs of all local bodies, impose rules of party conduct, rule without appeal in terms of dissolution and reconstitution of local organs, and convert all other organs into executive limbs. However, this is a Blanquist position according to Luxemburg, and it robs the working class movement of the capacity to develop properly. Communist thought arises and spreads according to the dialectical contradiction wherein the proletarian army is recruited, and then they become aware of their objective in the struggle only after being recruited. These occur at the same time via the same mechanics. Therefore, tactics cannot be dictated from some externality, which is what she claims the Central Committee is. The party must be itself the proletariat, the concentrated will of individuals and groups representative of the working class. The party is the self-centralism, quote-unquote, of the advanced sectors of the working class, who recognize that they must seek unity and centralization to achieve victory through theoretical analysis and practical experience of the working class. The history of class struggle of the proletariat. However, since the party is a mass party, and since the proletariat is the rule of the majority within its own party, a large contingent of workers need to be educated in the class struggle. Such education can only truly be achieved through freedom of expression, both inside and outside the party. In addition, the proletariat's party will naturally achieve discipline which is distinct from absence of thought, of executive organs or spontaneous coordination. Rather, it is a new form of discipline, which is freely assumed by liberating oneself mentally from habits of obedience and servility. Since the proletariat naturally develops the tools for its liberation, rather than focusing on directives for future struggle, which we cannot make strong determinations on. Instead, we should educate about the class struggle and its necessity to eventually lead to revolutionary tension. Any attempt to put the power of all decision-making in an enclosed section of the party makes it conservative, thus making it sterile and unable to utilize all resources. To take productive action, the whole labor movement instead needs liberty of action, which will allow them to educate themselves through struggle. Such external discipliners and decision-making is toxic. Organization of the mass party requires coordination and unification, which doesn't necessarily involve submission to a set of definite, unchanging regulations, but instead to what is necessary for an organization to really flourish, which is 1. Political mobility, 2. Unflinching loyalty to principles, and 3. Concern for unity. If these are maintained, then any defects in a given movement will be corrected through praxis. The membership will then determine the organizational form according to their needs and the spirit which is engendered from the shared discipline in maintaining the above. Luxemburg then says that opportunism arises out of material conditions, and hence the form of opportunism is dependent. It is ultimately acting without principles and aims at achieving a specific immediate end goal without also paying attention to the whole of the needs of the movement. This is not something that is stopped through external disciplining, but rather through organizational structure, matching your material conditions, while also avoiding the creation of conditions wherein mandates can be unquestionable or lacking strict definition and organizational structure. In addition, the proletariat must engage in independent and revolutionary action, as that will produce political responsibility and self-reliance, along with aforementioned discipline and desire for centralization, which matches the conditions of their struggle. Such responsibility and self-reliance puts checks against opportunism and ambition. In order to deal with more individual forms of opportunism in the party, such as through all other classes and groups which protest the bourgeois order, including class traitors, the party needs to bring them all into it, but bend them to the will of the proletarian struggle. Such an absorption of other social groups into the will of the proletariat requires a nucleus, which can utilize party bylaws to maintain the dominance of the proletariat. 1. Strong basis in the party. The proletariat must remain the majority. 2. High political education. 3. Class consciousness. 4. Able to use strict centralization. And 5. Severe discipline. Ultimately, the movement of the party is a dialectical one, emerging from the contradiction between the immediate interests of the proletariat and their social general ones, the revolution. It is this contradiction which allows for the party to develop and the proletariat to build up experiences, being and becoming. The mass organization can only develop within the limits of capitalist society, which is why it's key to maintain the ultimate goal as the constant focus. Opportunism stems from such immediacy, such unavoidable social conditions, and is thereby impossible to anticipate and fully stop all potential opportunist deviations. Only a movement guided with Marxist theory and by historical experience and acting to resolve manifestations of opportunism will actually defeat it. When in doubt, the proletariat as a whole must take action. Through this, the working class's collective unconscious will learn through experiences gained and create organizations which will deal with their problems. And that is the end of my summary of the Luxemburg Organizational Questions of the Russian Social Democracy, Leninism, or Marxism. If you'd like to go over the quotations I derived the summary from, as usual, please feel free to go to the description below and you'll find a link to the Google document that I have collected these quotes and made the summary based on. I also have a link to United Marxist Pact Discord server. If you would like to discuss any of this in any way, shape, or form, then please feel free to join. We do have a vetting system, to be clear, but it is not particularly difficult so long as one enters with an open mind and with the aim of actually doing it. That being said, tomorrow we will be going over the 1904 piece by Lenin, Reply by Lenin to Rosa Luxemburg, one step forward, two steps back. And that's Lenin's reply to this accusation that Luxemburg has made, which is essentially that Lenin was a Blanquist. That being said, thank you for joining me for today's topical summary, and I hope to see you then.